Paddock RallyCast. This is episode 52 from over a week ago. Apologies for the late post on this one, but we welcome back to the show someone who has become a massive inspiration to us all, Dave Wallingford. After a nasty crash and roll almost exactly a year ago, Dave had to relearn how to walk again, let alone drive. He's made a remarkable comeback and will be competing in this week's 100 Acre Wood Rally. Ian and I also discussed a few other bits of rally news, including his experience from the Oz Rally Pro Development Co-Driver Academy and his transition to becoming a professional co-driver. This is Open Paddock, the RallyCast. Well, welcome back, and as I said, we have a special guest with us, Savage Dave Wallingford, who's made a remarkable comeback. Dave, first of all, just tonight, how you doing, man?
Hey guys, good. Thanks for having me on. I'm doing good tonight. I'm getting anxious, getting ready for 100 Acre Wood next week.
You sound amped. It's great.
Yeah. It's been a year since I've competed in a rally car, so that's the longest I've gone without competing since I started rally. So I'm ready to get back into it.
Well, I guess that's one thing I was going to mention is, most everybody that listens to our show probably knows, but it's almost been exactly a year since you had that horrible accident down in Mexico. I guess I'm not sure how many people really know exactly what happened, though. I mean, I know you were hurt, but if you don't mind telling us, kind of go through it?
Sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was, actually this Sunday, it'll be exactly 1 year. Let's see. So, yeah, things were going pretty well in the R5. I had done some testing for Rally Mexico down in Arizona. The roads down there were good for a pre-event test for Mexico, but they may not have been the best roads to how to drive an R5 on. So I wasn't as prepared as I would have liked to have been, but I was on my way there. The rally had been going pretty well. I've been doing really well in the super specials, and the gravel stages, I was, slowing down a bit. For not only was my first rally in an R5, but my first rally in an all-wheel drive car.
Right.
And then about midday on Saturday, came around this corner, and what I remember, just this like really brief, like a couple of milliseconds of me seeing this washout on the edge of the road right in front of me and going, oh crap, I cannot tell how deep that is. And for those of you who have not been out on the rally roads in Mexico, they're up in the mountains and they get all these washouts at the edges of the roads. And
that's for like drainage, right?
I mean, they're just, no, they kind of like eat into the road.
I see.
They're not really like ditches. They're like, little semicircles where everything's, washed away. So I saw this for just, a couple of milliseconds. And then next thing I knew, we were flipping a couple of times and we landed on the roof. And pretty much instantly I knew something that was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong, but I could definitely feel that I thought something was broken, but it wasn't my back that hurt at the time. What I really thought was that something had happened to my hips. I thought that, my pelvis had shattered or broke both of my femurs or something bad had happened down there. And it wasn't until they actually pulled me out of the car when I started feeling that my back was hurting. Much later on, I found out that it was my L3 that shattered, and the nerves that come out of the L3 go straight to the hips. So I didn't know until much later on that that's probably why I had so much pain in my hips as opposed to my back. So it took them about, I want to say 20 minutes. I'm not sure where I get that number from, but it's the number that, I don't know if somebody told me that but it took them about 20 minutes from the moment we crashed till I got out of the car.
And to you, it felt like a lifetime, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And, let's see, in that time after we wrecked, I knew something was wrong. So I was going to try to get out of the car, made sure I could open my door because we were on the roof. Make sure, I wasn't in a ditch somewhere. Open the door opened fine. And so I took the steering wheel off the column and put my hand down and undid my harness to kind of slowly let my body down. And then as soon as I was down, I realized that I couldn't move at all. at the time didn't know wasn't that it was because that I couldn't move my legs. I thought that my legs had been wrapped up in the harness or something. I didn't really know what was going on. I just knew that I couldn't move. And yeah, after about 20 minutes, they had to come and cut a couple pieces out of the cage and get me out of the car and into an ambulance for about 100 meters to take me up the hill to the helicopter, which took me to the hospital. And yeah, that's the beginnings of the past year of my life, I guess.
I can imagine it must have been pretty scary once you kind of, realized, your legs aren't feeling like they used to and things like that. I mean,
yeah, I mean, it was definitely scary, but I think it's more confusion than anything at the time. It wasn't until, I don't know, days later that, when I was, a little more conscious and aware of what was going on, that, the reality of the situation started to settle in.
So then, obviously, you had to have a couple of surgeries. I'm guessing some additional hardware added to you, which is not unusual for most people that have been in rally in their lives, right?
Yeah. I had my surgery down in Mexico, sometime that evening or overnight maybe, and had 2 rods installed and a total of 8 screws. So I have some more titanium hardware in me.
So you're going to be setting off the alarms when you go through the airports in the future.
Well, that's what I was worried about the first time I went. The first time I traveled to go up to New England Forest Rally to do recce up there last summer. But I did my research and it didn't set off anything, and I didn't have to take any medical forms or anything. So I lucked out there, I guess.
But your recovery, I mean, it's long. It's a slog. You have to work really hard at it. I saw that picture that you posted about graduating from your physical therapy stuff. You literally had to learn to walk again, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Let's see. So I spent about 4 days in the hospital in Mexico, and then got a medical flight back home to Columbus for a few days, and then ended up at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center, where I spent 2 weeks at the Brain and Spine Hospital, and then got transferred to the Dodd Rehab Hospital for 3 weeks. When I was at the Brain and Spine Hospital, a physical therapist would come to my room every day and we'd do 30 minutes worth of stuff. I remember the first day, the very first thing she had me do was sit up in bed. And that just sounded like absolutely so much pain laying in this bed. There is no way that I can even sit up. And by the end of the session, I did sit up. And then she came back and was like, all right, we're going to sit up. And that sounded just like the craziest thing in the world to me. There's no way I can do this. But by the end of the session, that's what I was doing, and just kept going, kind of moving on from there. By the time that I moved to the hospital, I was able to walk about 10 feet with a walker, with a person in front of me and a person behind me supporting me for about 10 feet.
Wow.
But the therapists at Dodd Rehab really whipped me into shape. I would wake up at like 7:30 in the morning, and I'd go from then until about to various rehab sessions, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and spending a lot of time in this harness that would support me on a treadmill. They also had this device that they would hook up to my legs that would shock my muscles, and in the right order for me to be able to, my brain and my spinal cord, where to send all those signals from my brain going down to my legs, and remind them in what order they all needed to fire. And yeah, literally walking. I'm still working on it. In fact, I think just maybe about 2 months ago, I finally figured out how to walk downstairs. It was until that point, it would just baffle me. Like I cannot figure out how to walk downstairs effectively. And suddenly I figured out that the way you walk downstairs is kind of opposite the way you usually walk. They've been, drilling the heel first, off with the toe. And when you're walking downstairs, it's kind of the opposite. You're kind of landing on your toes. And,
right.
Yeah. And it's just, things like that I've, taken for granted since I was like a year old,
Yeah, when you're a baby, you just, and growing, you just naturally learn these things at that slow, steady pace, right? Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you have to now consciously think about that.
Yeah.
So, obviously going through all that process, having to learn, all these different things, how to walk again and whatnot. And I know you still had some pain that you were dealing with. You had a cane for a while. Are you still having to walk with the cane?
No, I ditched the cane around Thanksgiving.
Awesome.
So yeah, I kind of graduated from the hospital, been for a while, and then with a walker quite a bit over the summer, and then finally done with the cane. So it's nice to be able to walk unencumbered.
Yeah, I saw you with the cane at Ojibwe, where actually talking about Ojibwe, you were looking rather enviously at the rally truck. You weren't angling after a ride in that, were you? No,
so yes, maybe someday.
No, so it was, and it was. Even though we'd all followed your recovery off online, it was still for me a little bit of a shock to see you there walking. It was great to see you there, but it was still a little bit of a shock to see you there with a cane. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can imagine. It's kind of been it's still a shock to me seeing myself. We take videos of myself to, trying to figure out what I'm doing wrong when I'm walking. Just it's bizarre to see myself like this. Mm-hmm. But one thing it's been good to see my all my crew and friends from Team O'Neill every few months, and it's a good reminder of how far I've come in the month or two that I've seen them, because it's the progress is so slow and subtle. To hear it from those guys, I don't know, it feels good.
Yeah, you talk about support from the team, but you've also had a great deal of support from the rally family. Everybody, all your friends online on Facebook in the rally world. I mean, the support that you've received from them all the way through your rehab and recovery, must have helped a lot.
Yeah, that was pretty fantastic. Spending 5 weeks in the hospital, really learned what living in a home gets, and coming home afterwards and, spending most of the day stuck in a chair or in bed or something. And I have a lot of great friends who came and visited, and that was wonderful, but they can't be around 24 hours a day. So I ended up spending a lot of time on Facebook and Instagram and, social media. And it was a huge help to see across the board, no matter who I knew, but especially from the rally community.
I guess I was going to say, just psychologically, just that process of being such a glacially slow improvement. And I can understand that there's probably been dark days as well as the bright days, right?
Oh, for sure. Especially, I think there were some miscommunications between the hospital in Mexico and the hospital up here about the seriousness of my injury. And I think somewhere along the lines, they got the complete injury, which means that the spinal cord is completely severed and there's basically zero chance of recovery below where it's severed. And there were this is a complete spinal cord injury. You're gonna be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. This is a permanent thing. And those were tough times, but were quickly fixed when they realized that I could move my legs and that it was just a partial injury.
So just moving on to today, though, you sound like you're obviously chipper and doing well. We saw you doing the recce's that we again near the end of the season last year, and we're excited as all hell to see you out there. But then we see that you went on a test drive in the R2 and then got back in the seat of the R5. How did that feel?
Yeah. So when I went up to do recce for New England Forest Rally, that's a day up at Team O'Neill, and just got on my R2T that I ran in 2017 a little bit, just to see if it's still even a possibility like car, and that went surprisingly well. It didn't go great, but it went pretty well. And so then later in the summer, or maybe early fall, September maybe, and that went really well. And then started making, at that point I knew that a return to rally and the R5 was definitely a possibility. To get the R5 back together and some testing dates, and we ended up down in Texas in January, which was a great test again. It was kind of nerve-wracking being in the R5 again for the first time. Taking a pretty easy approach to all of this. This is every day that I get back in the R5 is just another day to see how well I can do. I have no expectations on myself. This and leading into 100 Acre Wood, this is all just another big test of what I can still do in a rally car.
So actually, about that test, we were, so we're big fans, and I've occasionally been on the Absolute Rally podcast, and one of their friends there was, I guess, helping you get kind of to grips with some of the setups and what's different about the R5 with that testing.
Yeah, so I had Matt Edwards come over from England. He had won the British Rally Championship last year, and a huge help to have in the car with me down in Texas. The R5 is such a different animal than many other cars. It was good to have somebody who's competed in that car before, knows how it handles, and can kind of lead me through that process.
What makes it so much more complex? Is it just because you've got the center diff, rear and front, and then you've got is it the suspension can do so many different things? What is that? Is it just an exponent on the number of variables versus when you're in the R2T?
It's a combination of all that. It's certainly the diffs. You just don't. It feels unnatural for the car to dive so much in the front under hard braking, and the 3 or 4 different sway bar possibilities in the front and rear, and all kinds of suspension settings. So it's getting some base settings.
And apologies for those listening. Sorry for the internet connection kind of cutting out a little bit, but I think we're getting the gist of what you're talking about there. You were saying about how the R2, you said, was about how much removed from a production car versus the way the R5 is?
So if the R2T that I was running in 2017 is 1 or 2 steps removed from a production car, then the R5 is 10 steps removed. It is a real race car. There's very little of it left that resembles a production car.
Gotcha. So other than the fact that it's just got the basic shell, everything else is all designed nothing but for racing. The suspension travel, that sounds pretty killer.
So I was up at the Oz Rally Pro Training Academy at the weekend, and Rhiannon was telling us about the experiences with the R5 Fiesta. And apparently on the car, there is an R5 button. Now, she was entrusted with pressing the R5 button. Would you care to explain a little bit what the R5 button is about?
Yeah, so the R5 button switches the modes in the car between stage mode and transit mode. Basically, it changes the throttle map and adds a bunch of boost and a whole lot of speed, and turns on the anti-lag, and it's basically the fun button on the car.
So she said that as the co-driver, she was entrusted with the pressing of that button. Now, in your car, did you press the button, or did you leave that to Leanne?
No, that's my job. That reminds me that I'm about to have a whole lot of fun, so I get to push that button.
That's awesome. I love it. But you're, of course, having to keep up with physical therapy, even though you're not necessarily, you're graduated, as they say, but you're still doing quite a bit of this on your own, right? It's a new way of life.
Yeah, it is. So basically what they say is that where you're at 2 years after your injury is how much nerve recovery you'll get. So I'm still pretty early in that process, halfway through. So there's still a lot of potential recovery. I still have a lot of, numb spots in my legs, and there's still a lot of kind of nerve disconnection in my muscles. And even if my muscles are big, because I don't have that nerve connection, I'm not able to use all of that muscle. But yes, even though I'm done with physical therapy, I'm still spending tons of time at the gym, just trying to get in as good a shape as I can with this new body arrangement that I have.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, part of it's rewiring your body and your brain, and it's interesting. I think it was even just 30 years ago that they didn't think that nerve endings would ever grow back, and once you had a certain condition, you're kind of stuck with it. And over just more recent history, we've now learned differently that not only can those connections be remade, but the brain learns new pathways to make it work. Right? It can kind of reprogram itself like a reprogrammable CPU, and it's really fascinating. Really looking forward to seeing your continued efforts at recovery. And like you said, this is still just the beginning, and you're already doing great. So let's talk about 100 Acre Wood then. That's next week. You're going to be competing.
Yeah.
You did a test actually out in the woods near there recently, didn't you?
Yeah, down in southern Ohio. was talking with Pat Morrow a month or so ago, and he says, "Oh, I'm gonna go take the Sonic out for a test. You want to come along?" He's like, "Yeah, can I bring my car?" And so yeah, we went out and did a little test, and that was actually the first time that I've driven an R5 on a gravel road in a forest. All of my testing is, been in Arizona or Mexico and, really dusty, rocky desert roads. It was nice to get back to, the situation I'll be competing in this year. And it felt really good. It was nice to kind of be back at home with this car.
I was just going to say, we're all very, very happy to see you back. We're looking forward to seeing you out on stage.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited to see all the cars at 100 Acre Wood this year. That is quite an entry list. With, virtually every fast car in the country is going to be there. So that'll be a lot of fun.
It's going to be pretty insane. It's going to be some very stiff competition. But what are your kind of specific goals for 100 Acre Wood right now?
Right now, the main thing is finishing the rally. Being my first rally back, I just need to get back into it, see what things need to be different with me, or how I interact with the car, or if I can even survive a weekend of a rally. So I'll be doing a lot of learning, and I don't have too many goals other than just taking in as much data and information as I can and applying that towards the next rally.
Well, I must say, it's, we're so excited to have your R5 be the first one kind of to stay in the United States anyways. We've seen visits before, I guess, on rare occasion. But now yours is one of 3 that seem to be around. Plus, we've got those proto cars out there. We've got the AP4 that we might see of Ryan Millen at some point, not at 100 Acre Wood, but at some other events. And speaking of that, do you have a schedule of events that you plan on doing this year, or is it see how 100 Acre Wood goes and then figure it out from there?
We'll have an idea of what I'd like to do, but it really depends on how 100 Acre Wood goes. But, I'll certainly be at my favorites, Olympus, Southern Ohio, Oregon. Plus, I think I'm going to try to do as many of the Canadian events that are left this season. So I'm not 100% sure on what the season will be, but 100 Acre, Olympus, Southern Ohio. So we're going to do three in 3 weeks, which is kind of crazy.
Wow.
Southern Ohio up to Rocky and then down to Oregon. Figure, if I'm going to get back into it, might as well really get back into it.
Yeah, if your body can stand 3 in 3 weeks, you should be doing pretty well.
Yeah, I hope so.
That makes me tired just thinking about it. Well, you are Savage Dave. You never take it lightly. You always go full bore, man. And so excited to have you out there. I guess just kind of wrap it up. Anybody in particular you want to thank for this progress that you've made, and just happy for you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I can't even begin to thank everyone who's had a hand in all this. All my therapists at OSU, all my siblings and my mother have all been super supportive, and my girlfriend Linnell has been there every step of the way, and just the entire rally community and everybody at Team O'Neill has been really helpful, and it's just been fantastic to see all the support. Yeah, dude,
you're awesome. That's all I can say. You're awesome. You're an inspiration to all of us. Don't let anything ever keep you down. Keep pushing, and you can still achieve amazing goals. So,
POR, man, POR.
There you go. Press on.
Yeah, actually, when I was waking up for my surgery in Mexico, actually, when you said POR reminded me of this, is that I was on some fantastic drugs waking up for my surgery.
Of course.
And was convinced that I felt totally fine, and I was really hoping that the car was okay, because I really wanted to finish Rally Mexico under Super Rally or Rally 2. So I was really looking forward to that day, but then I woke up a little bit more and realized that wasn't happening. Yeah, there hasn't been a moment since then where I haven't been itching to get back in a rally car.
Dude, Dave, we will see you in a little over a week, and man, just so glad to hear from you. Thank you for telling us your story. Again, folks, sorry for a little bit of the audio hiccups, but I think we get the gist of all he's had to go through. But like I said, you're an inspiration. You're someone that I think we can all just reference when we're having tough times and can look at, hey, you can still come back. Just work hard, and you can make it through. Thanks, dude.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Thanks.
Well, once again, I'd like to thank our guest, Savage Dave Rally. Wow, Dave's got such a great story, and we look forward to seeing him at 100 Acre Wood. But we want to talk about a few other news bits from the last week or so. To start off with, there were a couple of rallies. The Cochrane Rally, which was just up north, the Cochrane Winter Rally, I guess I should say, which friend of the show, Warwick Patterson, took out his Mark I Escort. And that was really cool to see him finally get that thing fired up and out playing in the snow drifts up there at the Cochrane Rally in Canada. And Krista Skoukas, another friend of the show, she was his co-driver. They had a little bit of a moment, which was great, where they had spectators had to help push them out a little bit, which is always fun. Kind of a WRC moment, as I think Warwick put it. They finished the rally. That's, I think all he was looking for. The car sounds mega. It sounds so good on those stages. And who doesn't like a Mark I Escort?
Absolutely. It's one of the great rally cars of all time, in my opinion.
Definitely. Looks like Alex Kozlov ended up coming out on top in that one in an open four-wheel drive car with Vilnius Dimpers, I think it is in second place in an Evo 8. And Graham Bruce came in third in a Mitsubishi Evo 2003 model. So a couple of Evos and a Subaru up there at the top. No surprise considering the super slick conditions, all just completely covered in snow. So, a lot of fun sideways action for sure. All right, moving on. We also had the Sandblast Rally, and that was where our good friend Johnny Sage, he was out there. He took some little bits of live video. Those, unfortunately, a little bit pixelated. He's going to re-upload some of those, I think, from his phone now that he's, once he got signal again. But yeah, the live streams were pretty darn horrible because the signal was so bad. But boy, that rally, it ended up being, I think one of the comments I saw, turned into a Tough Mudder event.
Well, that was one of the few things that I actually did see anything about over the weekend was the conditions. I saw that these sandy routes were like covered in water. It looked as bad as Central UP did last year. There's one picture sticks in my mind, like a huge mud puddle in the middle of a stage, and there was like 3 cars stuck in one of them.
Yeah, there was it was funny is it's that sandy kind of soil, but it's kind of mixed with clay. Yeah, it just turns into muck. And I remember Chris Greenhouse, who was talking after a shakedown test earlier in the day. He was talking with John, and he said it was just like ice out there. It was super, super slick. And unfortunately for Chris Greenhouse, he was leading the event overall, actually, in his two-wheel drive car, which was just awesome. You'd think the four-wheel drives would just dominate. Then he had a power steering failure, which led to a small off into a tree, and that broke some rather important bits in the front of the car, and they weren't able to get it repaired to get back out there, which is unfortunate. But yeah, driving without power steering is hard enough. Driving without power steering on super slick conditions where you have even less control, I can't even imagine.
No.
So I'll just do a quick little top few here. Martin Donnelly looks like came out the winner overall. He's the one that's got the other R5 here. So that's R5 number 3. What, Barry McKenna's got one, and you've got one with Dave Wallingford, and now this Martin Donnelly. He's got an R5, and so that was competing out there. So he looks like he came out the overall in the four-wheel drive heavy or all-wheel drive heavies. Nick Bragg in second, and Stephen Freeman in third. Then in the lights, you had Dunker Felix Jr., Mario Nogales, and Amanda Skelly, third place in the lights class, which is awesome. And then in the two-wheel drive heavy, we have Michael Hall, who seems like the only one that finished in the two-wheel drive heavies. Oh, man, tough driving out there. In the two-wheel drive lights, we have Alexander Larson, Rob McCarter, and Radoslav. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher your last name. Radoslav is probably how you say the first name. So congratulations for him getting on the podium. Wow, just crazy stuff. There was one side-by-side out there, too. Lester Dickerman was out in the side-by-side, so it's good to see some of the expansion of that. And then, of course, they have their motos out there. That's what's unique about that event, is they kind of almost do it, Dakar style, I guess you could say. I don't know how they do notes when you're in on a motorcycle doing a stage rally, but the roads are pretty well marked, so maybe you can just drive what you see. Any final words before we go?
Well, I guess you might just like me to talk about my weekend for a little bit.
Oh yeah, you did have a little bit of something that you did. You're saving it for the end. All right, saving the best for last. So,
saving the best for last.
Mr. Ian Holmes, you got to be at the Oz Rally Pro in Idaho and complete the Development Academy. All right, man, tell us about it.
I got back like I said, the wee small hours of Monday morning, and it's like I've spent all the time since trying to absorb everything that went on that weekend. It was, let's get this straight first. It's like this was their first co-driver development academy. This is they did the Elite Academy last year, I believe it was.
Yes, it was last year.
We had friend of the show, Matt James. He reported on that to us, and so this is like an extension, a development. We can't say it's a development of the idea, and that's to take co-drivers who are at a lower level, whose requirement was that you had to have done 10 or less, and 10 rallies or less. And I think I just crept in. I think my total is 10. It just depends whether you count regionals or nationals. If I was counting only regionals, I was probably over the line, but we're counting nationals. I probably just made it. At the weekend, the start of the weekend, I mean, it's like the Midwest saw a huge snowstorm, so that messed up everybody. Like trying to get into Boise. I mean, one of my
fellow students.
There's the word for you. Yeah, fellow students. Tabitha Law. She ended up in Seattle overnight and had to sleep in the airport to make her way to Boise the next morning. I didn't get into Boise until after midnight. I was waiting in Minneapolis airport for 3 hours for my flight to leave. But this situation itself, that showed off Joe Cimino's organizing skills. So, I mean, they've got to have organizing skills to work as a co-driver, getting all your paperwork and everything in order. While all this was going on, while we were being stranded in the airport, and Alex and Rhiannon were working on rewriting the schedule for our weekend. It was class was supposed to start like 8 o'clock in the morning, and they worked the schedule and rejigged it. So in the end, we got a nice lay in the end, which was nice, and we didn't start until 11. But while we were flying or being stuck in airports, they were rejigging the schedule and everything. So that's a good co-driver skill there, your organizational skills. I was picked up at the airport by my roommate, Glenn Ray. I mean, Glenn is a super guy, top-notch guy. I think we need to get him on the show sometime soon to get him to talk about his Project Phoenix.
Yeah, it'd be good to get Glenn on the show and give us some more details on that whole project that he's got going for when it comes to veterans.
Yeah, so now so day one, and it's like I said, we got a lay in, which was really nice. I mean, we were all pretty shattered. So we drove out to Horseshoe Bend. That's where Alex and Rhiannon live, in the mountains. I mean, Horseshoe Bend, there's a real Wild West name for a town, isn't it?
Well, it's rather fitting, yes.
So we were met there with coffee and muffins. Now, everybody's talked about Rhiannon's baking and says how wonderful Rhiannon's baking is, but Alex's coffee is excellent. So,
well, he's Italian, of course.
Yeah, so
please.
Yeah. So we all got to know each other there, and to start this training program off, they showed us a few welcoming videos from some motivational messages on video from some of their friends, and their friends are people like Julian Ingrassia and Dan Barrett and Phil Mills, Brendo, of course, and even Colin Clark, sat at his kitchen table. So, and they all like that. These people, these friends of theirs, can give you a motivational message. It gives you an idea of how important people think a training program like this is to bring on co-drivers. So from then on, we've got down to work. We covered all the good stuff, all the basic stuff, all the stuff you need to know, all the stuff that I've developed a lot of bad habits about. I mean, I've never used maps in my recce planning, but with using maps for recce planning is a good idea. I can see the advantages. I could see the advantages of absolutely everything that they told us. It was.
Was it quite a few of those? Well, why didn't I think of that moments?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like
I think
you
that's
get
what the years of experience that they've had kind of shows that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like generally, I turn up to a rally and I get the route books and the notes and stuff like that, and that's really where my planning kind of like sort of starts. But
so you're starting after you've already gotten to the event.
Really,
typically.
yes,
Yeah.
But no, I can be so much more prepared by starting early. I mean, yes, I've watched YouTube videos of the stages to get a feel for them, but there's certain things I've that they raised with us that I'd never considered doing. So, I mean, the paperwork that those guys carry around with them, they carry around a copy of the rule books, the championship rule book that they're on. They carry a copy of their rule book, and they've got certain parts of the rules all highlighted. So if the relevant part of the rule book to them, they can easily find. So that's something I've got to do. That's something I've got to do. I've got to print out because the ARA rule books for 2019 were released today, weren't they? So I need to print those off and get those all marked up, ready for use later in the year. But it was the best. Everybody was, well, certainly me. And what we were looking forward to the most was after lunch we moved. And did I mention how good Rhiannon's baking is? Because she made.
Yes, I think we heard that. Yeah.
This is the big thing. This is the thing that a lot of people take away from this. Is like Rhiannon's baking is good. She makes her own bread, and you walk into the house and you can smell freshly cooked bread. I mean, what a wonderful way to start the day. But so the afternoon we worked on to the making of the pace notes. So, well, let's not say the making of pace notes, because it's the efficient making of pace notes. Everybody we when you go and make your pace notes, it's like drive around. If you've never made pace notes before, that's the thing. It's like I've tried and failed abysmally, but to see them do it. Alex drove the car. We headed out into these remote mountain roads, and Alex took the wheel, and they went through it as if they were. Alex was in the driver's seat as if he was the driver, and Rhiannon was playing co-driver's duties, and they took.
And then you three are sat in the back, just kind of listening to the process,
watching what they're doing. Yeah.
Okay.
And then it was our turn, So we'd watch them and absorb them, what they were doing, and then we got turned loose. So Rhiannon moved to the back, and I got thrown in the front seat first.
Oh, perfect. Well, you're the one that barely made it in, so you should already have some knowledge, so they thought.
Yeah. And so this was, there are things that you don't appreciate when you're going, when you do this for the first time. So how difficult this is for a driver, because the driver's concentration is so total and utter. But they're focused on the road ahead to produce the notes. So it's like it's a big strain for them. I mean, you think it's hard work for the co-driver scribbling the notes down, but the concentration it takes for the driver is something I wasn't aware of.
Well, and they have to visualize the road,
Yeah.
not at the recce speed, but at race speed.
Yeah. So,
which is exponentially more difficult, right? So let's say you're driving on the road at 30 miles an hour, but they got to estimate what 60 is or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a different line, really, that you would have at that speed, and you need to somehow translate that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we did a simulated 2-pass recce. So we drove a couple of miles of road, and I would take the notes. And then we go back to the start and we drive it again. And this is like the second pass where I read the notes back to Alex and he decides whether they're right and whether they need any alterations. So I'm reading the notes back and then Alex is, no, make that right 5 a right 5 minus, or well, no cut on that right 3. So I'm having to alter the notes on the fly. So I'm all this time I'm learning his language for what he's describing, and then I'm making notes with it as well. And after a while, you kind of like get into it. You get the feel for it. So we had one day of that, and I would, after my 2 passes, I went into the back seat of the car and. I think it was Glenn went in, and so we watched Glenn do what he was doing. He was doing the notes while we were making our own notes of Glenn's run as well. So we were watching him and we were making our own notes, and we were learning that way. We were watching his progress. We were I'd got a slight advantage to start with because I'd been first, so I was able to do a bit more, I think. But as we all kind of like rotated round, we were all learning it. But we were all learning really quickly. We were all taking it on really, really quickly. It was fantastic. That was, and we had an afternoon of that, and then we had a debrief in the evening, and. The thing about we had a debrief in the restaurant in the evening, and the way that Alex and Rhiannon were talking to us and saying that we should be able to consider we should be able to consider getting calls from people to go out there, and it's kind of they were treating us as potential professional material, And
and why shouldn't they be? I mean, the reality is, once you get this process down and you're able to do everything that the driver would want you to do, not make mistakes, be able to, I guess understand pacing and all that stuff, and interpreting those notes correctly, making sure you know how to make corrections, I guess, while in the process of running the stage. Do all those things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what the professionals do. They don't make mistakes.
They're
the ones that have a routine down. They plan effectively. Yeah, I mean, why shouldn't you be?
Yeah, but it's like when you've spent I've spent 4 years working with people who were like as my friends, to think that I could be at a business level. It's a quantum leap. I mean, I know I have what this weekend, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here, but what this weekend has taught me is I have the skills, I have the abilities, and hear me talking, I have the confidence. But back then, at the end of that first day, it was a bit of a shock to the system to be talked to like that as a potential professional.
So then the next day, what happens then?
Second day was well, we covered more of the basics of being at a rally, and the thing that I was really excited about was Rhiannon showed me how to use my co-pilot watch. I mean, I've had this co-pilot, fast time co-pilot, co-driver's watch for like over a year, 18 months. I've never been able to use it properly. So Rhiannon it was a part of the training, because these watches are so useful, so invaluable to a co-driver. To be able to use that efficiently is an important part of the co-driver's bag. So I was absolutely chuffed to bits to see what my watch actually can do. So I'm going to have to spend tomorrow night learning how to use it properly. So, and the other big important thing for me was, like, they went through time cards, because I am so bad with time cards. You know, it got to the stage with me. I would always remember the car that was in front of me, and I would go into the control a minute after them, because my brain just got so fried with the time card system. So I've had that explained clearly and concisely.
Yeah,
So
that's
to have
extremely
that,
important.
yeah.
That falls into all kinds of strategies too. And
Yeah.
And the other thing you have to think about is, at a lot of events, remember, those people working the time controls are volunteers. Just having that confident co-driver kind of helped me along as a volunteer to make sure that I did my job correctly. Was something very useful. So, and it prevented, of course, them from getting a penalty they didn't deserve or anything like that. So
yeah. So yeah, I feel much better about time cards and can't wait to use my watch properly. So, and then later on, we actually got out. We went out and did some more reinforcement training on the pace notes. We actually went out on a stage of the Idaho Rally. We used some of the roads from the Idaho Rally. I got to tell you, Mike, I mean, those
neat
roads,
huh?
Oh man, I have to do Idaho Rally. The scenery there and the roads are just outstanding.
Welcome to the West Coast. It's
Pretty cool out here.
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to have to do Idaho at some point. So we all ran the Harris Creek stage.
Yep, I figured that's which one it was, because that's closest to their place. Okay.
Yes. So we this was when, well, for me, this was when things really clicked. It was at that point. It was like a curtain was raised on me, and or the ropes had been cut. But Alex and I were driving up the stage, and Alex was reading the road and giving me the notes, and it got to the stage where it was like I knew what he was going to say. I was looking at the road and I was reading the road, and I was on the same length as he was.
Same wavelength, yeah.
Yeah. And this, I mean, I've had that on stage when I've been on stage, when you've been calling the notes perfectly for the guy alongside you. But in recce, this is just so weird. I could look at the road, I could listen to Alex make the notes. I could absorb what I was seeing on the road in front. I could make a note of that, and if I felt like I needed to, I could approach Alex about that during the second running, saying, "Do you think we should do this?"
Right.
There was, and that was just incredible.
And what's cool is that, expanding on that a bit is, when you said you could see that certain piece of road and you knew what he was going to probably call out, when you create that relationship with the driver, eventually those pieces of road are all the same, right? So a right 3 plus or whatever it is, you can imagine what that looks like, whether it's off camber or whatever, and you'll find that piece of road in many places all over the country, right?
Yeah.
All over the world, in fact. And as you get comfortable and learn those bits and how they look, just those little sections, are programmed into you, so you just know already, right, what that's going to be. And I think also that probably would help out with changing conditions, right? You're going to know what that normally looks like and be able to factor in whether you need to slow down or whatever, and maybe change that note description.
It was an incredible experience all round. It was like being at a rally. When we were driving back to the airport, we was Glenn and Tabitha and I. It was like that Tabitha said, I've got a rally hangover.
That's proper.
On the Saturday morning and the Saturday night and Sunday morning when we'd been traveling between the Boise and the Gelsomino's place, we'd all been like happily chatting on my own, discussing stuff. And on the way home, the way back, the car was silent. We were all kind of like, we were miserable because the weekend was over and we had the rally hangover. We'd learnt so much. It was incredible. I mean, what did I learn the most about it? Well, everybody's asked me that question, and I think I learned I don't want to blow my own trumpet too much.
Oh, sure you do. Come on, admit it.
This is, But by the end of Sunday, my flight back, and I was like waiting in Salt Lake City Airport for 3 hours, and that was I didn't have anything to do for 3 hours, and that's when it really hit me that I can do this co-driver's business. I've always wanted to do this co-driver's business, and with a certain level of application, I can do this co-driver's business really quite well. I'm that well, just stepping back to that piece where I say where I was being able to read Alex's mind on the Harris Creek stage. If you'd have said there's Chris Meek in a car, go and do his pace notes, I would have said I can do that, because but then my level of confidence was in my ability was so stratospherically high because of what I'd been taught and the way I'd been taught it.
Well, it'd be interesting is to see if what it's like for you when you start stepping up into a faster car, into a more professional atmosphere.
Yeah.
And being able to put those skills to the test there, right?
Yeah.
Obviously you do everything as professionally as you can based on the pace that you've got, but I'm sure everything gets amped up a bit when you're like Alex working with Ken Block, or you're Rhiannon who's working with Ryan Millen at times, or somebody else at the top, Nick Roberts, or when she's traveling and doing stuff in an R5 over in the UK. So it's a whole other level, but at the same time, the core skills, you now have them.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so, and that's the thing. It's like, I can tell you how great it all was. All about the fun and the joking and the camaraderie between us all. And I could go into great detail on what we learned, but that wouldn't be fair on Rhiannon and Alex because it's their training course, and you should go on their training course. But until you actually go through it and experience how it changes your outlook, that's the thing. It's like my eyes were opened. It's like the curtain was raised and all that kind, and ropes were cut and all those other great cliches. It's difficult to explain it unless you've been through it. I mean, I could probably talk with Matt James about it, because he's been through a similar sort of thing, and I could talk with Glenn and Tabitha about it. But unless you're there and you start to realize what they've told you, you realize how it's changing you and your attitude. It was an amazing thing. Now,
you're going to be one of the proponents of making sure that every event should have 2-pass recce.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
There we go.
Now I've seen what 2-pass recce can do. Absolutely.
Exactly. All right.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to end our show.
Mm-hmm.
I'm your host, Mike Shaw. and with professional co-driver Ian Holmes. Remember, you can listen to our show on Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, or wherever you search your podcast apps, Alexa, all that stuff. We're also on all the other social media platforms if you want to catch some pictures and things like that. And we even publish these on YouTube if you like to listen that way. Just remember, please subscribe, tell a friend, give us a like and a share. It really does help us out. Anyways, thanks for listening, everybody. And remember, don't cut.